I'm John Leonard. I'm a corporate lawyer at Fairfield Woods in Denver, Colorado. We're putting together a video series, wide-ranging topics. If you own a business or thinking about owning a business, if you have employees, if you're interested in wills and trusts, we have a video on almost anything that you could think of. So today we're talking with Jack Tanner. Jack is a partner of mine in the litigation department. Jack has a general litigation practice, although he has a couple of specialties. One is intellectual property, litigating copyrights, patents, and whatnot. And another one is receiverships. And it's very interesting. We just did a video on how a receiver is appointed. We specifically pointed out if you're a lender and you don't have the right, and this is for non-real estate, since it's usually in a real estate context, provision to have a receiver appointed as part of you being a secured creditor, shame on you. You need to have it and call Jack and get that into your document. But let's talk about once a receiver is appointed, Jack, what does that person do?
Well, typically they take over business operations of the company. And they maybe try to stabilize operations, usually with the goal of either selling the company as a going concern or at least attracting some new capital to it. So maybe they can cut some fat in the operations, maybe they can expand operations in some areas, but basically a receiver is a businessman. And conceptually, what a receivership is the court is taking a business into the custody of the court to operate the business until the court can sort out some dispute. But the judge isn't a businessman. And so the judge appoints a businessman to run the company. That's the receiver.
And if I'm a president of a company and you're appointed a receiver, am I out of a job? Do I just go home and wait for you to save the business, or what happens?
It depends on the receiver and the president. It could be that the receiver says, boy, the real problem with this company is management. And so I'm going to come in and change things. And so we're going to give the president the financial quarter off while I sort things out. It could also be that the president is great at doing a great job and the receiver keeps the president in place. It's just that the president now, instead of being where the buck stops, the president has to report to the receiver and the receiver has to report to the court.
So a receiver is appointed. He walks in on day one. He or she. Yeah. What does the receiver do then?
Well, see, and that's a great thing. It depends on the receivership. It's a really flexible remedy, and so there's not a single answer to that question. Usually, the first thing they do, of course, is get hold of the bank accounts and the money. They look at who's owed money, who owes money to the company. And just really try to get a handle on the business operations and figure out how can we best packages for sale or investment. And then the next step is the receiver has a fiduciary duty, not just to the creditor that got it appointed or the owner that got it appointed, but to all the creditors and all the claimants. So the receiver usually does some kind of claims process to find out who all the company owes money to and in what quantities, who's secured, who's unsecured, are there priority debts. And then once the receiver's got a handle on the claims, the receiver looks to, sell or recapitalize the company, pay the claims to the extent they can, and then they get discharged.
So let's talk about recapitalization. They go out, the receiver goes out and finds money, whether that's debt or is it debt and equity or just debt?
It depends on the situation.
And then he or she just does that, or do they go back to the court? I mean, how does that happen?
It's often it's usually equity. I mean, often the company can get more debt on its own. That's not its shortfall. It's getting equity. And the receiver is actually an arm of the court and doesn't do anything without a court authority. So typically an order appointing receiver will give it a power to do sort of ministerial, day-to-day, usual business course operations. If it's something material like bringing in a bunch of equity, then you go back to the court and ask the court to specifically bless that deal. Because everything the receiver does, the receiver's an arm of the court, everything it does is done with court supervision.
Right. So if we're not recapitalizing, we're probably selling right. The assets. How does that work?
Again, depends on the circumstance. One thing that is true of receiverships, which a lot of people don't understand, is that the sale of the assets is free and clear of all claims, liens, and encumbrances. The way the law works is if you've got a claim against the asset that the receiver sells, you've now got a claim against the pile of cash the receiver just brought in, but the buyer gets title free and clear. So as a result, you can often get better prices in a receivership sale than you would in a private sale, because when a buyer buys at a private sale, there's always a risk that the creditor of the company are going to come after you, say you're a mere continuation of the old business. You don't have to worry about that with a receiver because you get a court order say, and the buyer gets it free and clear.
Well, that's a great segue. We're going to do another video and compare and contrast receiverships with bankruptcy.